to the white paper, 45% of respondents are happy with their salary, or you could twist that around and say 55% are not. Surprise, surprise. So of the people who are unhappy with their salaries, the biggest reason they cite is that it hasn't risen with inflation, and the second highest reason is that they've got far more to do in their job. So from your sort of recruitment perspective then, what's your sort of commentary on that?
We had over 1,200 people do the survey, which is, phenomenal, I think, and that's testament to Jill and her work. And, salary always comes up in a conversation. If you're an employer, people are asking too much. If you're a job seeker, employers aren't paying enough. That's just life, that's just going to happen. The interesting bit for me was obviously talking about the inflation rise, and that, I think, is something that we know as an industry, and sometimes it is because there's a rush to recruit new staff. And some of the feedback we had, look, I'm a recruiter telling you not to recruit new staff, but investing in your current workforce, you could give everybody a cost of inflation. You don't need to go and hire the next 10 people. But the other side of it as well, what was the second bit? Sorry.
They've got far more to do in their roles.
That's always been the way in the industry. Every job seeker I've ever spoke to says I do more. But from the point of view of where we are now, companies don't have the revenue, they don't have the spend to up headcount. And unfortunately what happens is you don't want to say no because you're worried about your job or you're worried about how that will be perceived. So people take that on, but hopefully what the survey shows is, people are at that point of, I can't do any more, I need some support. And for employers, it's really important to listen to that because we all know what happens next, and that's that they leave your business.
Dale, you're nodding in agreement there. Do you have a similar take, or do you have a different element to add to that?
Yeah, I was quite surprised in the survey that where pay had actually risen quite to the top, whereas the last few years we've all been talking about, or it's all about purpose, and so that's probably indicative of where we are at the moment with the cost of living, that it's gone to the top of the list. I wasn't surprised with it, but I also think, to be a little bit controversial, coming back in from COVID, productivity is still not where it should be. And, people are maybe thinking they're busy. I'm not sure they're using their time effectively enough. We've had a few people who've let them go because they've got out of the habit of it completely. Or new people we brought in and they're just not up to speed, but they're demanding very high salaries. So I think, absolutely, as businesses we should try and help people. We as a business do that. If people are in trouble, they need more cash, then we'll help them out. But I think we also got to be careful. I had somebody last year say to me, a young person in our business, do you realise I did 8 hours today? Are you part-time? I said, no. Like, come on.
Could I just jump? I think that is something, though, that we do have to be careful of an industry is working 15 hours a day used to be a badge of honour, but things have changed, I think, and we have to, well, not you, but as senior, older people in the industry.
Hey.
Yeah, well, unfortunately you're with me, Mary, but we have to recognise that the workforce that's coming up now and becoming middle management and senior management, they'll dictate to us because you have to flex. Otherwise,
I'm interested to get to Jack and Mary's input on that. But at the end of the day, if the job needs to be done, it needs to be done. And if there are 15 hours required to get something done, and you can't legitimately justify extra hands, then unfortunately that's the nature of the beast, isn't it?
I think we've got to remember we're in events, right?
Yeah.
We've got a hard deadline. I've been in the industry, 7-8 years. It's changed a lot even in that time. In my working hours were when I first started, 9 till 5:30 or 6, whatever it is. I didn't leave the office until 7:30. I was in sales, I had to get sponsorship, and the more I'd done, the more I earned, and so on and so forth. That's my career started in sponsorship sales. But there seems to be a lack of understanding of the harder you work, the more results you'll get. But actually, we're in events, and it is what's required when it's busy season.
I mean, there has to be a strategy
Of
for that.
course.
I mean, it's not just, hard work for hard work's sake. There has to be a plan and a purpose. And if people are working 15 hours a day and the company isn't turning a profit, then clearly there's a management decision needs to be made there and a change of strategy. What's it like?
Yeah,
at
I think for us, we try and think of the whole employee experience. So there's the upsides and the downsides. So for us, for example, talking about salaries, we actually took the decision to make 2 pay increases in the last year because we wanted to make small steps, but ones which we knew they were sustainable for our business in the future. We also introduced bonus plans to actually incentivise people to stay more long term. We've also revisited our toil policies, our time off in lieu, and our overall flexibility so that people with families are actually able to spend time at home. And we're now trying to approach the resourcing of projects. We allow for time off afterwards, and we allow for things like project debriefs and how has that made them feel. So we're trying to do a more of an experience and weigh things up. I wouldn't disagree that there are definitely generational differences between the way that I may perceive a working day to be to perhaps somebody maybe in their 20s or 30s. But we have found ways now to say, well, actually, what we want is we want you to come into the industry, we want you to stay in the industry. And maybe in some respects they've got it right, in some respects, that actually if you balance that out, that they're actually working their hours over the week, but in a different way, it's a better way of looking at it than killing yourself week in, week out, so...
I think one thing I mean, this is a whole different panel discussion altogether, I think, as well, but I think the survey is showing us as well that people are saying, I've got too much on my plate. Now, whether, old school, new school, whatever you sort of say, if people are saying I've got too much on my plate, and during the pandemic, we had 300,000 job losses and over 100-something thousand haven't come back because they found a job that's less stressful and can be paid more. We as an industry have to say, let's look at our expectations, because what's that Einstein keep doing the same thing, and 100,000 people haven't come back because they found other things.
But I also think we have a skills shortage, not just because of that, but because we've gone in 2 different directions. So 100%. Digital and hybrid, and still live events. And what that's ended up being is a skills shortage within the marketplace. So we've got to find that next generation coming into events to provide that backup and give them those opportunities.
I think what we've found though is some people commanding, because we've been short of people commanding high salaries. I know we're getting to it in a bit of 60, 70, 80,000 as an event manager, but actually hasn't got the skill, hasn't got the experience, working alongside maybe junior people who can't lead the team. We've been putting all year a lot of leadership training in, a lot of flexibility to try and help those people, but at the end of the day, if they can't cut it, then they have to go, and we're actually now losing people deliberately because they just haven't cut it, and they're causing chaos and causing more hard work for more junior members of the team.
I'm going to steal that phrase, losing people deliberately.